Hello, good morning. A very good morning to you all. You're welcome to my channel once again, Prince Tech Mastery. Over here, we teach you everything about tech. We help you to get better. If you're an already existing software engineer, you become a better one. If you're just someone that has interest in tech, you can also learn from this channel. This channel is full and loaded with lots and lots of tutorials, courses, and what have you, just to help you stay ahead in tech. And that is exactly what we do over here in this channel. You're highly welcome. For those who are joining us for the first time, the name this is Prince Tech Mastery, where we teach you everything tech. My name remains Okolo Chukwumebi Prince, your humble tech servant. Yeah, you can also address me as your favorite instructor. And we're going to be continuing today on our series. We have been on a lecture series on our lecture series has been on a very particular subject. Now we've been dealing with website design, the front end of websites. We've been looking at that for a while now. And today, last week, we were able to get into JavaScript. We got introduced to JavaScript in last week, and we're able to understand more about JavaScript and jQuery and jQuery. So now, this week, we're going to now be looking at a much more higher subject matter this time. We're not going to just be looking at the JavaScript that we looked at. As we looked at internal functions, today we're going to be looking at how to create our own functions and a couple of other advanced concepts in JavaScript and HTML5 to help you become a better web designer. And honestly, you don't want to miss any single part of this class today. The class is broken into multiple sessions. Into multiple videos. It's not just one long video that you have to watch all the way from the beginning to the end. We break the class down into multiple sections, and as we break it down into multiple sections, the whole goal is that when we break it down into multiple sections, then you can watch. When you get tired, you stop, come back and continue. I still remain your host, Okolo Chukwumebi Prince, your favorite IT instructor. Join me on today's journey. Thank you. Okay, so today we're going to be starting out with the first thing we're going to be looking at is functions and advanced JavaScript concepts. And I said some very important things here. Yeah, I said functions and JavaScript. This is our first topic for today. We'll say parameterized functions, and our first topic is parameterized function and return the return statement. And first of all, I already made us understand in the last class that a function can be defined as a block of code that is used to carry out a specific task repeatedly. As a block of code that is used to carry out a specific task repeatedly across your computer program. I already made us understand that is what a function is. And in some programming, in all the programming languages, a function is actually expected to have a name. Yes, a function is expected to have a name. In most programming languages, every function is expected to at least have a name. But in JavaScript allows you to make use of what we call anonymous functions. What are anonymous functions? Anonymous functions are special functions in JavaScript. Anonymous functions are special functions in JavaScript that do not need to have a name, but you can call them, and the JavaScript interpreter has a way of identifying whenever you need those functions to function in your computer program, like we discussed in the last class. Now today, and I want to encourage us, let us try and go back to the past videos and start this series from the beginning, because it will help you to understand where we are now. Are you getting me? Yeah, it's going to help you to understand where we are now. By the time we finish this series, we're going to put it together to a complete series, a playlist that you can just come and play all the way from the first one to the second one to the third one, and so it goes till you are done completely. So I want to encourage you, go back to watch our past videos and be able to come down all the way from there, so you can be able to follow up on this. So now what do we say? We say functions are reusable, just like I said, functions are reusable blocks of codes. Yeah, reusable block code. One advantage of function is that you can use a function you can use a function over and over again in your JavaScript code or in whatever programming language you are working with. Functions are reusable. You don't just use a function once and that's it. You can always use it over and over again in your code. A parameterized function accepts input values, arguments, allowing the function to process dynamic data. Now, what is a parameterized function? Now, a function is not just a block of code that carries out a specific task. You can also use a function. So a function can also take arguments. It can also accept certain input values that will allow the function to process dynamic data. Meaning that when a function is parameterized, Every time a function is parameterized, it means that each time you call that function, each of those arguments that is the input values that has to be passed to that function must be passed to that particular function at every given point whereby you call that function. That way, the function will be able to process data. That's why we say functions accept what input values, allowing the function to process what dynamic data. What do we mean by dynamic data? We're trying to say that the data can change over time. Yes, data can change what over time. So with the help of parameterized functions, functions that have parameters, even if the data changes, or as if the data changes, you can still use the same function to achieve the same task, carry the same goal on that same on that same data. That is how it works in parameterized function. The return statement, on the other hand, every function in JavaScript must have a return statement. And the return statement stops the execution of a function and returns a value to the function caller. Yes, whenever you end a function in JavaScript by calling the return statement ends the execution of the function and then returns back a value to the caller of the function. That's to whatever that call the function. It could be a HTML, it could be an input form in a HTML document. Maybe you prepare a function that validates password. So the return value could be maybe the password, a response of whether the password is valid or not, and what is not right in the password. That could be the return function. Some of these are what you can achieve in JavaScript. So this is so the return statement stops the execution of a function and returns a value to whatever called that particular function. Now, JavaScript is also an object-oriented programming language. Yes, it's an object-oriented programming, though not an object-oriented programming language in the sense of a normal object-oriented programming language like Java, C#, C++, etc. But JavaScript is an object-oriented programming language, and it works with the principle of objects. And there are JavaScript has about 2 objects that it works with. It only works with about 2 objects, and they are the browser objects and the document already. First of all, what is an object? We say, what is an object here? We say data structures containing properties, key values, key and value pairs, and methods. Yes, an object in JavaScript can be defined as a data structure. What is data structure? A data structure can simply be defined as the composure or the composition of a particular data. That's what a data structure is. Data is defined as a raw fact. Like I always tell my student that you refer to data as the most basic unit of information, because it must undergo further processing before it can be useful to the end user. That is what data is. Data structures contain properties, key. The data structure, on the other hand, is talking about, because data is not just simple. We don't only deal with simple data in programming. In programming, we also deal with complex data. And some of this complex data is like, for instance, if you want to model a human being into a computer program, for example, you want to model a human being into a computer program, you know very well that you cannot model a human being with just integer or with just string. And you can't model a human being that way. For you to model a human being, you must model the person. You need to combine multiple data types to model that particular human being. For instance, you can represent the age with an integer, you can represent the name with a string, you can represent the behaviors of the person, like talking, eating, seeing, perceiving, you can represent that with methods. So that is exactly what data structure. So a data structure can simply be defined as it's talking about the composition of complex data structures, because objects are complex data structures. They are not simple data structures. We have 2 types of data of data in every programming language. We have the simple data, we have the simple objects. There are 2 types of objects. We have the simple data and we have the complex data. Complex data are data that cannot work with just a single data type. You have to have a combination of properties and methods to properly be able to model that particular object into your computer program. And that's why we say data structures, objects can be defined as data structures containing properties. What are properties? Properties are talking about characteristics, behaviors. Yes, if you are asked what are the properties of a human being has eyes, a human being has nose, a human being has hands. These are all properties. Are you getting me? And they are represented with key and value pairs. And methods. What are methods, on the other hand? What's a method? You can refer to a method basically as what you can do with the properties. For example, with the eye, I can see. That seeing is a method. That is, we're talking about the actions that can be performed with a particular property. With my mouth, I can talk. Talking is a method. We're talking about the actions that can be performed with a particular property. So data structures contain The objects can be defined as data structure that contain properties which are characteristics and methods. What those characteristics I'm so sorry, I have a cold. Uh, and methods, which is all those characteristics and methods, which are functions or all those things that you can do with those characteristics in the data. So that is what objects are. Then now in JavaScript, there are two categories of objects in JavaScript currently already, and they are the browser objects. JavaScript has two object models: the browser object model and the document object model. The browser object model contains methods and properties that interact with the browser. All together, yes, it interacts with the browser. Like you can see some of the things we have there. We have, okay, let me zoom my manual a bit more. It might be easier for some of us who may not see. Good. Now, some of the things we have under the browser, or everything about the browser object model lies under the Windows objects. Yeah, if you want all the methods that JavaScript has for the browser to interact with the browser is in the window object. Yes, the window object. So inside the window object, you can access the various methods. You can access window.navigator, window.location. All of these are all methods and properties that are available to JavaScript in the browser object model. The browser object model interacts directly with the browser. So now we have here, so you can see what we have here, interacts with the browser, e.g. window, navigator. These are some of the properties and methods. Then we have window, navigator, screen, location. With the help of this, like if you want to capture a user's location, that is not something that interaction has to take place with the browser, because your HTML document, your website is basically just an application running in the browser. So when JavaScript provides you with a number of functions, even if you want to interact with the hardware of the computer system, probably the camera and other things of that device. For you to even interact with them, JavaScript is also for JavaScript to interact with them, it has to work with the browser. That's why you have applications like Skype. Why are they possible to work today? Is because of the fact that they are interacting with the browser object model. So the browser object model is concerned with every property and contains every property and every method that you need to interact with the browser with the browser with a browser. Simple. With a browser. With the browser viewing your particular HTML document at that particular time. Now we now have the document object model. This represents the HTML structure. Now the browser object model is concerned with the container. That's the browser that is running your application. That's what it is concerned with. The document object model, on the other hand, represents your HTML document, your actual HTML document that is residing inside that container. So we can say that the browser object model is concerned with the container, while the document object model is concerned with the contents of the container. Yeah, that's the best analogy for that. Yes, it's concerned with the document is concerned with the content of the container. So the container is the browser, while the main application itself, to interact with the main application itself, the HTML, the CSS, to manipulate it in your JavaScript, you have to make use of the document object model, and all the methods and properties available in the document object model is available under the document object. You can see something like document.getElement by ID. This is a JavaScript method that is used to capture an element based on the ID that you assign to that element. If you go back to our past lectures, we looked at CSS selectors. We will be able to understand what we mean by IDs and classes. We also have document.getElement by tag name, by class name. We also have document.getElement by tag name. There are a lot of various document objects model methods and properties that we have that you can use to interact with the HTML document and write to HTML in JavaScript. Even when you want to output data to the end user, you also use the document object model by using methods like document.write. Now we're going to see some of all of these things as we progress, but then I'm just trying to explain to you so that you understand this before we start practicalizing. I'm someone who believes that you need to understand what you are doing before you jump straight into code. If you don't have a proper understanding, especially in programming, of what you are doing, and you jump into coding, you won't really be able to produce any code of your own. But by the time you understand all of these basic theoretical principles, it is easier for you to be able to, work with your own, to be able to create your own code, not just work with codes that I show you in the classwork or in the assignments. Okay, now we're going to be looking at something very important, promise.any. Promise.any takes an iterable of promise object. It returns a single promise that fulfills as soon as any of the promise in the iterable fails. With the value of the fulfilled promise useful for fetching from multiple mirrors and taking the fastest response. Now, promise.any, just simply put, is simply when you use multiple objects, I get me, that fulfill that multiple iterable promise object. We're trying to say if it's iterable, we're trying to say it's in an array, meaning that you can jump through each of them, and then you pick the one with the fastest response. Like you might be interacting with maybe up to 5 different scripts, and then each of these 5 scripts are doing the same job. So each one, anyone that successfully that is able to give a response first, that is the one you pick, and then you ignore the rest. So that's what it works with. So what we say, a promise.any takes an iterable of promise object. It returns a single promise that fulfills as soon as the promises in the iterable fulfills. So it only picks the one that fulfills. If you have multiple parts that a particular code should follow, like if it's an Ajax processing system, you're processing a form and you have multiple processors for that same form. Okay, you can use the promise.any to iterate through each of them so that the one that fulfills first, if they all do the same thing, can be executed. Okay, let's proceed now. Private class methods. And what are private methods in classes? Private methods in classes are created using the prefix, the hash prefix. Now, let me explain something to you. What is a class, firstly? Now, JavaScript, like we have established, that JavaScript is an object-oriented programming language. Now, JavaScript being an object-oriented programming language, as it were, makes use of classes. And what is a class? A class can be defined as a template from which other objects are created. Yeah, other objects are created from what? A class. So what we are saying here, so each time you have a class, when you create objects, you can create objects according to the data structure of that class. And these objects can actually customize the properties and methods that have been declared in that particular class. So we say, so private methods in classes. What is a method? A method, like I already explained before, is also the same thing as a function. A method is basically a block of code that executes, that you can execute to carry out a particular task. That's just the job of a method. A block of code executed to carry out a specific task. That's it. So when we say private method, they can only be called from inside the class declaration. Yes, this JavaScript as an object-oriented programming language must abide by the 4 principles of object-oriented programming. Don't worry, in our curriculum, we have a place where we're going to be discussing extensively on object-oriented programming and the pillars of object-oriented programming. But for now, I'll just give you a brief. There are 4 pillars of object-oriented programming. What are the 4 pillars of object-oriented programming? The first pillar of object-oriented programming is encapsulation. What is encapsulation? Encapsulation is the ability to prevent direct access to data in your objects. Yes, it's the ability to prevent direct access to data in your objects, except through the use of predefined methods. So encapsulation can simply be defined as the ability to hide, to prevent direct access, like making sure that before a particular data can be accessed and manipulated, it must go through a predefined what? Method. And this method has to be predefined at the point of creating that particular class. That is exactly what a method, that is what encapsulation is. And we also have the next pillar of object-oriented programming is polymorphism. This is the ability of a method or a function to be able to act in different ways, or the ability of objects created from a single class to be able to have multiple implementations of a single method of that class. That is exactly what polymorphism is. It's the ability of of a method or a function to be able to act differently in different situations. Okay. Now, the third thing about object-oriented programming is inheritance, the principle of inheritance. This is the ability of a child class to be able to inherit the properties and methods of the parent class. It's also the ability of an object to be able to take on the properties and method of the class from which that object was created. And it also allows the object to customize some of these methods and properties to its own taste. Just like, you are a parent, you give birth to a child. Okay, let's just use that example. You're a parent, you give birth to a child, and maybe you and your husband are fair, and your child grows up and say he wants to become dark and buys a cream and decides to turn himself dark. That is a very good example of what we are talking about, inheritance. So even though objects can inherit characteristics from their parents, it does not mean that even though they can inherit characteristics, objects can inherit characteristics from their parents. they can also create customized versions of those characteristics that have been inherited from their parents, except for certain characteristics that have been explicitly declared that they cannot be altered or customized by child objects of a particular class. Those ones have to be defined by the class, and but we're not looking at object-oriented programming, and let me not confuse us. But the fourth pillar is abstraction. Abstraction is the ability of an object to hide intricacies, that is the implementation details, and only expose what is necessary. That is, abstraction deals with hiding complications and making it easy. For instance, we all know, for those of you that drive, for those of us that drive, you just come, you start your car, just on your key, your ignition, your car starts, and you drive. You don't know the process of how does that key send the signal. You don't need to be interested in how the signal goes from the key to the battery to the alternator, how when you press your brake, the message is passed to the tires. All of those intricacies, all of those complexities are not your business. What you know is that the interface, which is the key, you put it in, you start it, and it starts. The tire, the brake is an interface. You match it, and the car stops. The accelerator is an interface. You hit it, and it fires, and you add more speed to the car. And the steering is also an interface. You turn it to the right, turn it to the left, and your tire follows you. But the way this communication takes place is none of your business. And this is exactly what abstraction is. So abstraction is the ability to hide the complications of a particular of a class, to hide the complications of its operations, the intricacies of its operation, and expose only what is needed. That's only expose what the user needs to be able to carry out a particular task. Is that clear? So now, what are private? Now, in JavaScript, in the context of JavaScript, private methods and classes are created using the hash prefix. You can see this is the hash prefix. They can only be called from inside the class. Now, when we talk of privates now, when it comes to encapsulation, in most object-oriented programming language, we always have the private and the public. Now, there is more, but for the case of this, let me not complicate what we are learning, but let's just say we only have the private and public for object-oriented programming for encapsulation. So when you declare a method as private in JavaScript, that method can only be called from inside the class. From inside the class where that method was declared. It's only that way that it can be called. So that way, they can only be called from inside the class declaration, securing internal logic. So any private method that you declare is only within the class that you can use it. You cannot use it outside the class. Now, JSON, JavaScript Object Notation, is a lightweight format for storing and transporting data crucial for APIs. JSON is an acronym for JavaScript Object Notation, and it's a lightweight format for use for storing data and transporting data between two systems. Now, JSON is the format that is used to transfer and transmit data between two different softwares communicating with each other. That is what JSON does. So it helps to transmit information from software A to software B. That is how it works. It transmits information from software A to software B. And when you transmit that information to software B, software B can return a feedback in the same JSON format. When we say communication, if we define communication, we say communication is an exchange of information between two individuals via a medium. Now, what is the medium? The medium is a language. The language is a medium. So now, in this case, the language through which you can use to exchange data or transport data or store data exchange data between two different softwares is JSON. Initially, it used to be XML, but as time went on, JSON has taken over, and that's why we say it is crucial for APIs. API is an acronym for Application Programming Interface, and it can simply be defined as a secure tunnel through which two different softwares can communicate and exchange data and information with one another. That is exactly what API is. Two different softwares in different places can communicate with each other, and they can exchange information. And this information is exchanged through a language. And what is the language? The language is what? JSON. Okay? Now, all this English I've spoken, why not let's practicalize? Now, this is our practical. We say you are building a dashboard that fetches server status. To ensure it loads fast, it pings multiple server endpoints and displays the fastest response using promise.n. We will use private class methods to pass the JSON securely. Step 1, environment setup. You need to in our environment. So now, if you have been following us, if you have not been following us, like I said, go and watch our past videos. you have to set up your system. You have to install XAMPP on your system. We're using XAMPP here, and install Notepad++, and of course Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code will be used at a later time, but for this series, at this particular stage, you are only going to be using, we are only going to be making use of Notepad++. So now I'm going to open my XAMPP. Of course, the first thing you need to do is to create a folder for today's class. So I'm going to open our htdocs folder. You can see what I'm doing on my screen. You come here, you have to click on your hard drive, and when you come to your hard drive, you can see this folder. You can see this folder called XAMPP. This is where your XAMPP is installed, and then you see a folder called htdocs. So for the sake of today's class, I'm going to create, you can see I have different folders for different projects that I've been working on. So so the first thing we're going to do is to create a folder where our project is going to be in. I'm going to call today's folder, I'm going to say functions. Okay, let's call it functions. Okay, because we're dealing with functions majorly in this first topic. And when we do that, okay, let me go quickly delete this. This is a software I just wrote for someone. So we're dealing with functions. Now, inside the functions, according to the manual, like I said, when you create the folder, you can see create a new folder named topic1_functions. Now, inside the folder, now in my case, I called my own functions. You mustn't call it topic1_functions. Now, inside it, you are going to create 3 subfolders. You are going to create the CSS folder, the JS folder, and IMG folder. For those of you that have been following us, I always say that it is always better to use external style sheets and external JavaScript so that you can have what we call separation of concerns, whereby every HTML will focus on the structure. You don't end up juggling your code by mixing up HTML with CSS with JavaScript all inside the same file. It is going to cause you confusion in future when you want to debug. So that's why we say the first thing you need to do is, after you have created, you will now create a folder called CSS. And so my first folder is going to be what? CSS. I'll create a folder called CSS. Okay. And after we create the folder called CSS, we're going to create another folder. This CSS folder is where we're going to store all our CSS files. And then we're going to create another folder called JS. Okay, I'm going to create a folder called JS. This is where we're going to store all our JavaScript files. So create a folder called JS. Okay, all our JavaScript files will be stored here. And the next folder we said is IMGs. The goal of this IMG is for images that you may use. We may use images like logo or something that you will use on the website. You can store them in the IMGs folder. When you follow this structure, you are able, and you follow it religiously. I follow this structure religiously because it helps me so that in future it will be easier for me to manage my code. Okay, so we'll create another folder called IMGs. New folder, call it what? IMGs. This is where images will be stored if they will be used. Now, the next thing we have here is that we have to create these files. For you to create these files, you have to open your Notepad++. Okay, you click here. Just click here. Sorry, my system is my system, sometimes our systems can be really funny. Let me just wait a little for it. Let's just wait a little. The system is just having a little kind of hiccup. Okay, let's wait a little. Okay, let's continue. So now the next thing, for you to create these files, you have to open your Notepad++. So you're going to go through me because I don't want another situation of hanging. I'll just scroll down this Notepad++ and I'll open it. Now, when you open your Notepad++, we say you need to create index.html, and inside the CSS folder, create style.css, and inside the JS folder, create script.js. So we have to create each of these files. The first file is index.html. So we say file save. Index.html is the first page of your website. That's the first page. All servers are always configured to look for index as the first file for every website. So index, you open the htdocs folder and you scroll down to functions, index. Okay, and when you come to index, you have to save the index.html directly inside the folder. You're not going to save it in any subfolder. And then you move further and now save style.css. Okay, you say file, new, file, save as. Say style. .css, you save it inside the CSS folder. Okay, and then we create another file. We say file new, file save as scripts.js. We are going to create that, save this inside the JS folder. The purpose of doing this is that it's for future. Okay, in the future, this is going to help you seriously. If you organize your files like this, you will never have issue when you want to do updates or you want to debug your document. It helps you to work with the principle of modular programming. So we're looking for JavaScript. This JavaScript file, you save it as a JavaScript file, and that's all you say save. That's all. So now we have our tray files ready, which we want to work with. So now we move further. Okay. Now this is the code for the whole for the classwork. Let's test it out. Okay. The first thing is in our index.html, our manual is always attached. I want you to understand that we always attach our manual to each class. And for those who are special subscribers, that is those students who are premium students, the manual is usually sent directly to your inbox. Okay, so you are going to receive the manual, and also we also attach the manual as part of the description of our document of our class. Okay, so we'll copy index.html. You know, one of the problems of doing live coding, this kind of live coding, is that it wastes too much time. Of course, as a matter of importance, never you forget to add this tag, to add it equal to viewport, and you say content equal to we say width is equal to device hyphen width, comma, and then we have scale. We have initial hyphen scale, not scale. Initial hyphen scale is equal to 1.0, and then you have it there, and you have it like this. So now you have it just like this. Now the purpose of this tag, like I told us, is the most important tag in your head section, in the head section of your document. Is the most important tag in the head section of your document. What this tag does is to ensure that your website adjusts when it enters various devices, whether a mobile device, a smart TV, or whatever. Your website will adjust properly. So that is the job of this tag. So always add it when you are working, whenever you are coding. It should be in the head section. And of course, we move further. When we scroll down, we have the CSS. You know, we created the style.css inside our CSS folder. So we're going to paste that second code in this place, style.css. Okay. Then, of course, I don't need to explain all of this. If you have been following us, like I said, watch our past videos and you'll be able to have a better understanding of this. Yeah. And then we now move further to script.js. Move. Then we can copy this. Okay. Now you can see, don't worry, I'm going to explain all of these things to us, but let's see how this is truly working. Okay. So once we have done that, now the next thing is that we have to launch our XAMPP. Okay. So we can see the result of what we just did. XAMPP usually takes a little time to launch. So let me pause the video so that I can come back when the XAMPP has officially launched. Okay, our XAMPP has started, has come on. So the next thing we need to launch, as our XAMPP is up, we have to start Aperture. Okay, let's wait for Aperture to start. My system has a lot of softwares, you know, for development that will compete for ports. So that's one of the issues here where you can see some sluggishness. So let's see. Localhost, you go to localhost/functions. In my case, I need my folder functions/functions in your browser. Let's see. Now we say check fastest server. Let us see. Going to the fastest server, server beta, New York, status online, latency. So you can see this is what comes out of it. And we're using promise.any in this case now to achieve this result. We're checking multiple servers and we're using promise.any to look through each of the servers to decide the one that is the fastest. Now let's see what is happening here. Of course, this is your normal HTML document, okay? We have our doc type in, like I always tell us, this is like an introduction letter to the browser that it's about to process a HTML document. This is an introduction letter to the browser. Then we have the HTML lang equal to en. You are basically telling search engines that this document is going to be in the English language. That's all the text here are going to be in the English language. This way, the job of search engines basically is actually to help help users find their content more faster and more easily. That is exactly what search engines do. So if search engines are doing that job, one of the ways they use in doing that is that if people search from multiple locations, from different locations, they should be able to take them to where the language that they will understand. Like content in English is useless to a Spanish man who only understands Spain. Okay, so if it's in Spain, if it searches, so the purpose of this is just majorly for search engines. And like I told us, index.html is the first page of every website. Then you have the head section. Every HTML document, like I've taught us already, is divided into two parts, the head section and the body section. Now, this is the head section. And we have the meta char set equal to UTF-8. You are simply saying that this coding I'm going to code here is going to be in the UTF-8, American Standard Code for International Interchange, the UTF Standard 8. We have UTF-4, you have UTF-8, we have UTF-16, but UTF-8 is the most popular because it covers literally every character on Earth. Okay, so we now have the meta name equal to viewports content. This is used to make sure that your website is optimized for mobile, meaning that whatever device, with the help of this tag, whatever device that your website is opened on, your web page is opened on, that device that it is opened on, your website will adjust automatically to fit into that particular device, be it a smart TV, be it a large screen, be it an LFD, be it a mobile device. All of them, your website will adjust accordingly. Then we have the title tag. Like I said, the title tag, this is where what the title tag is. You can see what is appearing here. As you can see here, that's server status. This thing you're seeing here, that is the title tag. It's what you used to, is the only thing in your head section that appears on the web page, and it is used to tell the title bar of your browser what to write about a particular web page. That is just the work of the title bar. Then this link rel equal to style sheet, href equal to css like style.cs. This is how we're able to link our CSS file, this CSS file that we created in our CSS folder, to this document. So whatever we change here will automatically, for instance, if I wanted to change let's just say background color. Let me use htmlcolorcodes.com. This button, let's change this button to have a background color of red. So you can't cram, you cannot cram all the HTML color codes. So I'm going to change the button to a background of red so you can understand what we are saying. I need a very, very kind of bright red. There's a kind of, okay, I think I like this color. So you just go ahead and just copy it. You copy this. We just need to copy this particular code, and then let me replace what is here. I just want to watch that button and see, so you can see how this is truly affecting what we are doing. And if you come here and refresh, you can see that automatically this button has already changed to a red, to that very background color. This is possible because over here we have linked the style sheets to here. So every styling we want to do, all our CSS codes is going to reside in css/style.cs. So whatever we do here in terms of styling the website, we can change the whole design of the website just from that singular file. So we do that, and then this is the body section. Of course, we opened a div called dashboard. If you go back to our past classes where we dealt with CSS selectors, you understand why we have a class here. So the div class equal to dashboard. That's because we want to style it, and we may also use it in a script. And you can see we're using the .dashboard. Just go back to our past classes, and you'll be able to see how you will be able to understand CSS selectors and why we have classes, we have IDs, and the difference between both of them. Now we now have, of course, we created a heading, system status dashboard. We created a button, fetch btn, check fastest server, and then we have a div id equal to result waiting for action. Now we intend that we're going to be writing into this particular place with our JavaScript. Now this is going to be possible in JavaScript because of the document object model. With some functions of the document object model, you can write into HTML tags. You can write into HTML documents. You can even overwrite an entire HTML document if need be with the help of some of the methods of the document object model of JavaScript. Then over here, you can see the JavaScript file, this script.js file that we created here. We linked it here. It is always better that you put that the script tag, where if you are linking to an external script or you are even declaring a script directly inside your file, keep it and let it be the last thing that appears before the end of the closing of the body tag. It should be the last thing, because so that your script does not execute before your document load. It could lead to some issues. So it is always better you put this is the best position for it just before the closing of the body section of your HTML document. Now, of course, we close the HTML tag. Okay, I don't want to emphasize on CSS, but if you look at here, we gave a font family, Arial sans serif, we gave it a font, we gave a background color, we use the display layout flex, we justify the content to the center, we align the items, we justify content to the center horizontally, and we use align items to justify the content to the center vertically. We have the height 100 VH, that's the 100 viewport height, that's the entire. You should take the height. What we're saying that the height of the entire screen where it is being viewed on should be taken, and then the margin is 0. Then we have the dashboard, that is that class dashboard that we had. We have it there, and we gave it a background color of white, padding 30 pixel, border radius, box shadow, okay, text -9. I don't really want to emphasize on the CSS here, but if you look at this CSS properly, you can understand what we're just doing is giving font sizes, giving margins and background colors, and then giving colors. There's really nothing so spectacular or amazing we're doing. But the major focus of today's class is on the JavaScript, and that is this now. You can see this is the JavaScript, okay? Now the first thing we did is to create class server manager, okay? Yes, we created a class called server manager. This is how you declare a class in JavaScript. You can see we created class server manager, and then we created a private method. Remember that I told you in our manual, we say that private methods are created using what? You use the hash symbol in JavaScript to represent private methods. Okay, let me go up. Let's hide this so that it will be easier. Yeah. So you can see we say the private methods are created using the hash prefix, and you can see that fully at work here. So we created a private method called hash pass server response. That is a private method called hash pass server response, and the argument it is going to take, this is the method here. The method is pass server response, and it's going to take the argument of JSON string, and now we use the return statement, return JSON.pass. JSON.pass is JSON.pass is a JavaScript function, okay? It's a JavaScript function that that is used to look through and process a JSON object when it is passed to it. Now, this is another parameterized function that we have here. Now you can see we created the class. The class started here, and we ended the class with when you create a class, you use the keyword class and then a name for that particular class, which is like now in our case is server manager, and then you open a curly brace, and inside the curly brace you put the different data you want to declare for that particular class. Like I said, the class is a template from which other objects are created, and then you declare everything you want to declare, then close it with a closing brace. Then parameterized function which return. This is where we create a parameterized function. Now in this parameterized function, where this is a function with a name, simulate fetch. You can see we didn't need to use a function. Of course, normally you can have the function keyword there, it will still work. If you add the function keyword, our code will still work perfectly. But then we don't want to use the function keyword. We just want to use, it directly. JavaScript still understands making use of functions like this. You must not add the function keyword. You can even see over here, we didn't add the function keyword. So with or without the function keyword, JavaScript already understands that this is a function the moment it sees these two brackets. So we have simulate fetch, and we are passing two arguments, the server name and the delay. That is the time the time of the delay, because we're trying to, this our software is supposed to check multiple servers and choose the one that is fastest. Okay, then we say return, in the return statement we say return new promise. Promise, remember we're talking about promise, and we say promise loops through, a couple of things, and then we picks the fastest one. Because of what we are building, we need to make use of promise. So we say return new promise. So we declare the promise keyword, and we have two arguments here. We have resolve and we have reject, and then we set the timeout. Const response is equal to server, the server name, we have it here, you can see it here, status online, ping, delay. Okay, resolve this dot hashpass server response. You can see where the server response is, the response, because we are going to, this is basically a JSON object that we crafted. We just crafted a JSON object here in this const response that we are going to pass to here, to this JSON, to this particular method that we created, to this private method. We passed a JSON response to it that we are going to pass to it. That's what we just did there. Okay, and then when we passed it, and then we declared, we did the resolve, and we just use the promise to just loop through each and every one of these. So now, to get the fastest server, we have declared multiple servers. We have const server 1 dot equal to this dot simulate fetch. We are using the this keyword because we created a class where it's object oriented programming. We're referring to the current object. So we created multiple servers. Use the const keyword in JavaScript to create a variable. Okay, so we created multiple servers. We have const server 1 equal to this dot simulate fetch. Look at this, look at this, look at this. Then using promise.any, return promise.any. With the help of promise.any, it will loop through each of these guys and check for the one that is fastest. Okay, this one is being picked that is fastest because why? We told it here in terms of delay, and the delay that was passed here, this simulate fetch takes two arguments, the name of the server and the delay time, and this has the shortest delay. So if you run this program 1,000 times, it will, okay, let's add another extra. Let's add another extra server now that is going to take 200. You will see something here, and we'll say equal to this dot simulate fetch. Okay, and I'm going to call the server, I'll say server gem, and in brackets I'm going to have Nigeria. Okay, yeah, Nigeria is my country, I'm a proud Nigerian. Okay, and okay, I'm going to have it. Okay, and then comma, I'm going to give it a speed of, I'm going to give it a delay. So I just added, I've been able to add, I added another server now with a shorter delay. If we should run this code now, let's go here and run it now. You will see something now. Refresh, check for the fastest server. Okay, what's wrong? What's wrong? Where did you miss it? Didn't miss anything. Okay, so yeah, we missed something. We needed to add is on an infinite checking here. So let's refresh again. And I'm very sure if we check this time, we're going to get a result. Okay. So what the simulate fetch basically does one thing. What the simulate fetch does basically is that it loops through. The simulate fetch takes two arguments. It's a special function that we created. It takes two arguments, and when it takes the two arguments, it checks the two arguments it takes is one, the server name, and after taking the server name, it also checks for after it takes the server name, okay, let's see. Okay, this dot simulate fetch. Okay, you see I have an issue here. JavaScript is case sensitive when it comes to functions, so you must take note of that. Okay, so that's why our code was not running. Our code was running on an infinite loop. So I'm very sure if we declare it, you can see. So just like I told you, as you can see, because of the fact that I kept my fetch was in small letter, not capital letter, that was why it changed. Because when we created a function over here, we used F was in capital letter. So it's going to loop through each of these servers and pick the fastest. And how is it picking it? Because of the fact we passed through two arguments only. And the two arguments that we passed was basically the name of the server and the delay, the time that the server takes to respond. So anyone with the shortest response time is going to be picked. So this is exactly what we did. So then we went ahead and over here we now make use of DOM objects. We're interacting with the DOM objects now. Remember that over here we created an ID, fetch BT, and we have an ID here also, result. This is where we're going to give the user feedback. Now over here we have worked with normal JavaScript code. Here we're interacting with document objects. When you say document.getElement by ID, fetch btn, .add event listener, click. Now the event listener we added is we have looked at event listeners in our last class, where we looked at various event listeners. It is very important that you go back to those videos and be able to so that you can be able to flow with what we're doing. This course is a series. So if you miss a particular one, you will really find it difficult to just catch up along the line. So it's always important, except you have a prior knowledge. But if you are new, I always encourage you, please start from the beginning and keep watching and watching. You will still get to this particular play. It is on YouTube forever and ever. There is no deleting, there is no removal. It will always be there. So just continue, read, follow it up that way. So .add event listener, you have click, and of course we put the code that one cost result div, did the result div, and we created a variable called result div equal to document.getElement by ID. Remember the ID we created here, result, where we want to display to the user the end result of whatever action they performed. And so we allocated the value of that ID to this, and then we say results div.inner HTML equal to fetching. That's why at this point you can see when we click check, it first shows you what? Fetching. Yeah, it shows you fetching. Then you say const manager is equal to what? New server manager. So at this point in time, we create, because we now instantiated a class, we now created an object to use the new keyword in JavaScript to create an object of a particular class. So what we have done here is that we have created an object of the class called server manager. We created a class here, up here. If you look up here, we have this is where we created a server manager class, where we have the private method pass server response. And remember that you cannot use a private method outside that class. So we must create an object of that class if we're going to be able to access that particular value. So we now come here, we say manager, that's this very object, because as soon as you created it, automatically this will inherit all the methods. It's going to inherit all the various methods and all the methods and what have you, all the methods that has been allocated to all the methods and properties of that particular class. So manager.get fastest server, then for it to, you can see we have a method here to get the fastest server. Yeah, look at the method over here. Okay, now if you click here, you can see, if you click this place now, click here. So yeah, we just created the various methods, and because there is a class, it automatically becomes a part of it. Get the fastest server, then data equal to result.div. There will now tell it is connected to the fastest server. We take the response, and we get all of this back. So what we are just saying here is that with the help of the promise.any, it's possible for us to look through each of these servers. You see where promise.any can actually become useful. Like if you are providing VPN to users, for instance, now, if you build an application that provides users with a VPN, okay, if your application provides users with a VPN, one of the things is that a VPN, most of the time, one VPN is not always reliable. You may need to look through from one VPN to another. This is one place it can also work. Now, they all provide the same service, but they may not all be available at the same time. So with the help of the promise.any, you can be able to jump through each of the choices and find the one that is available and make use of it. Now, this is exactly how it works in JavaScript. Now, this is how it works. And then we have been able to create methods. We have been able to create functions by ourselves here. You can see the various functions that were created, like simulate fetch. This function carries two arguments, the name of the server and the delay time. Okay, which is what I explained to you, that is exactly what we are using here. And with the help of this simulate fetch now, anyone that has, because we are telling to take the one with the fastest response, whichever one that the delay is, the lowest, is the one it is going to pick as its own. And we experimented that by adding a server 4 as a fourth choice for it. So with this, you can see that now, you can see that JavaScript has a lot more to offer. And then we have been able to manipulate documents. We have been able to manipulate the HTML using the document object. And there are a good number of methods, okay, that you can in the document object model that you can use for various purposes. There are many methods, but the most popular methods is the document.getElement by ID. Okay, we have the document.getElement by document.writeLine Do we have that here? Okay, we don't have that here, but there are many document object model methods that you can use in JavaScript. I will encourage you to go and do your research. Go for additional resources, do your research, and find out more about other methods and when you should use them. We have special methods, document object model methods that you use for accessing values of forms. Like when a user fills a form, for you to validate the form or make use of the form, we have special methods for that particular purpose. So I will encourage you, as we are coming to the end of this first class, I want to encourage you, go through, and the manual is always attached, and try to create some methods of your own. Create some JavaScript methods of your own. Pass method, create simple method like addition method, subtraction method, create those kind of functions and call them, make use of them, and see how they perform, and know whether you have done a good job. This way you can master the JavaScript functions. I still remain your favorite instructor and the senior ICT instructor, Okolo Chukwunobi Prince. Join me in the next class. Have a lovely day. Thank you.